our feelings are decision points. They're not decision makers. And when we let feelings become decision makers, then what we're doing is we're making them Lord of our life. And I want you to be happy and I want you to be sad. And I just want you to feel both and then have enough wisdom not to make a decision out of it.
Hey friends, and welcome back to this season of The Mary Moran Show. If you are just joining us, this is a season we are lovingly referring to as the underestimated season, after the title of my third book, which just released this year, called Underestimated: The Surprisingly Simple Shift to Quit Playing Small, Name the Fear, and Move Forward Anyway. So all this season, which we are now officially extending all the way throughout the rest of 2025, I am being joined by some amazing guests, some all-time favorite past guests, and some brand new ones as we sit down and have the deep, hard conversations we love to have around here about all the different faces of fear I cover in the book. Things like procrastination, people-pleasing, imposter syndrome, self-sabotage, second-guessing, perfectionism, and more. And today I couldn't be more excited to be joined by a new friend. He's a pastor, podcaster, and coach focused on creating leaders worth following, and the author of the brand new book, Wisdom in the Wound, out everywhere books are sold today. Tony Miltenberger, as we talk about some of our deepest wounds that in fact give rise to our greatest gifts. Tony, welcome to the show.
Mary, it's such a privilege to be here.
Yay!
I loved having you on my podcast and getting to know you, and I love watching you on social media, especially after West Virginia dominated in
Yes.
the opener.
Well,
You might
I gotta be
remember.
honest with you. Dominated is this is a really interesting conversation we could have about end results and highlight reels and what actually went down on the journey to get there. It wasn't so pretty in the first half.
We watched. So my son is dating a West Virginia sideline dancer, like one of the
Nice.
dancers at WVU. So we have West Virginia is on our heart always, and we love the Gold Rush theme, and we were in it to win it. Like
Yes.
we're watching on ESPN Plus, like proud, whatever role we play in her life that probably shouldn't define online, but.
Yeah. Don't get anybody in trouble. Don't get anybody in trouble. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'm so excited to get to turn the tables on you because our conversation was honestly one of my favorite
Oh,
interviews I did for
you're kind.
Underestimated. You have, as you talk about in the book, and as we're going to talk about more, you have a real gift for seeing people and kind of just getting to the core of what they're about. And so I felt very loved and celebrated and seen when I was on your show. So I'm excited to turn those tables and do that for you. So we're just going to jump right into the deep end
Let's
because
do it.
that's what
Let's
we
do it.
do here.
Absolutely.
That's what we do here. This book is about wounds. We're just going for it
Yay,
right
go
from the
team,
beginning.
go team. It's so uplifting.
No, it really is, though. It really is. We're going right for the deep end. I love it. And the lawyer in me also loves a good working definition. So let's start right from the beginning. What do you mean by wounds?
So what I'm specifically talking about comes from a theological place known as the epistemic consequence of sin.
Woo.
It's a great Scrabble word.
Yeah.
And here's the deal. Everyone I've met is willing to admit that the world is broken, but very rarely do we talk about the consequences of said brokenness.
Mhm.
In other words, what does it mean? So from a scriptural standpoint, we understand that there's always a consequence for sin. Anything that separates us from God, in that separation, there's a consequence. Or said another way, like it's little t trauma. It's what
Mhm.
some psychologists would call it. It's little t trauma. And it happens to us somewhere between the ages of 4 and 12.
Yep.
And it's not anyone's fault. Nobody did it to us. It's not malice and intent, but it becomes a lens at which we look through life.
Mhm.
So your wound is something that you picked up in childhood. And to this point, I have yet to meet someone who doesn't have one. And it wasn't malicious in intent and became a way at which you looked at the world and how it shaped you and saw you and how it interweaves into your life. And so
Yeah.
for the purposes of our dialogue, when I talk about wound, that is what I'm talking about.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to read from the book really quickly. You say essentially a wound becomes the filter through which you experience life. Like you mentioned, it colors your thoughts, emotions, and actions in ways that are often subtle but deeply impactful. Whether you acknowledge it or not, it's always there, shaping how you interact with the world and with others. It influences your decisions, how you respond to challenges, and even how you interpret moments of joy or conflict.
Mhm.
The reality is, no matter how much we might try to compartmentalize or push it aside, the wound is woven into the fabric of our lives, affecting every relationship we're in and every endeavor we pursue. It's as if it's a part of our very being. And so I want to get even drilled down a little bit more. I feel like in the book, you put big T traumas into their own bucket, that the
I do.
wounds that you're
Absolutely.
talking
Yep.
about are little T traumas. Yeah.
So big T trauma is like a magnifying glass on that kind of existing little T lens. And so
Mm,
what I'm talking about usually happens between the ages of 4 and 12, and it really is interwoven to who you are. It, in my head, it's like a contact lens. Like it's unavoidable.
yeah.
You're going to see everything through it.
Mm,
And big T trauma has a whole different kind of compartmentalization. It has a whole different effect and impact. And so I've fortunately or unfortunately, I've had the privilege of working with people who have big T trauma, who don't have big T trauma. And what I'll say is that everyone I've met has little T trauma, this idea of the wound and what it looks like and the brokenness that we see in the world.
I got to tell you, that contact lens metaphor made me instantly think of, I don't know if it's Greek mythology, Shakespeare, or the Bible. I'm not sure. But one of them talks about plucking out your own eye. Is that the Bible? I don't
Yep,
know.
yep.
Yeah. Okay. I just picture somebody being like, get this contact lens out of
Right,
here. You
right.
know? Okay, so little T trauma. One of the things I just like to get some, you
Yeah,
talk about borders and
love it.
edges of the wounds, which I love. You say the heartbreaking reality is that in small T trauma, there is no villain. No one sets out with the intention of wounding. And most wounds come from our interpretation of a situation that was unintended and is just a result of brokenness in a broken world. It comes from ordinary everyday experiences that leave an unintended mark. So
Mhm.
just kind of like setting that up as our backdrop. Let's just for funsies, let's talk about your wound.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's talk about your wound. You say, for me, okay, first of all, this blew my mind. I was
Yeah.
having like a are you kidding me moment. You say, for me, this wound takes the form, talking about the borders and the edges, of an amoeba like shape that lives on my chest in my mind's eye. It has rough, uneven edges and a muted, almost dull appearance, not particularly attractive, yet unmistakably present. Do you know that in dirt, when I talk about dropping the wax on my leg and getting a really bad burn on my leg, that is exactly how I describe that wound.
No
Amoeba
kidding.
shaped, rough around the edges, like numb where it's like it burned so deep you couldn't even feel it anymore,
Wow.
and dull, like this sort of dull patina to the top. And so I was just like, "What is happening?" There's no question there except what is happening. I just feel like it's like one of those
Yeah.
tethers of your wound and my wound and the similarities in our stories, regardless of how different they are when we're walking around with this wound. And so for you, your wound came at a hospital, not specifically at the hospital, but it
Sure.
started with twins coming home from a hospital. You were in a playground and you were told to kind of hurry up, we got to get to the hospital, and just talk about when your younger siblings, the twins, came home, the wound that left you with, the message that it left you with.
I'll never forget the day that they were born. My dad is a big guy. Like I'm 5'7". My dad's probably 6'1".
Okay.
He's 2 bills plus, right? Like he's big guy. And I'll never forget being at this park and he whistles from across the park. And it's that indescribable knowledge of like, oh, that's my dad's whistle. I have to go right now. Like,
Yeah.
don't. There's sometimes you can push the limits and there are other times you can. And so we get into the back of our station wagon. And next thing I remember, my parents are bringing home their unplanned twins. And on that day, I went from being the youngest to the middle, and my poor parents went from playing man-to-man defense with their kids to now all of a sudden zone defense and just overnight. And the interpretation, through no one's fault, was that from that moment on, I didn't matter. Like I wasn't seen, that I just wasn't as important. And kind of the way that my story plays out is that that happens at 4, and then at 8 my parents get divorced,
Mm,
which is big T trauma that magnifies my little T traumatic event. And so
right.
throughout my entire life, I have just wrestled with the wound of wanting to be seen, wanting to feel like I matter. And of course, what do? I choose professions that put me in front of microphones or pulpits or people. And and I try to do things that help me feel like I matter to people. And that's not bad. There's nothing wrong with that. I have no shame in that. There's no embarrassment in that. It's just part of how I dealt with my little T trauma, the stuff that was like my brother and sister are great. I would never want them not to be here. And yet their existence changed my life. And
Yeah.
that has an impact on me that just needs to be honored and felt and recognized.
Love it. So big question, or we'll say medium-sized question.
Yeah,
We have big questions coming, rest
I love
assured.
it. I'm
This is
so
medium. This is
excited.
medium-sized. This came up for me because in the scene in the park when your dad
Yeah.
whistles, it's you and your sister go
Mhm.
running, and then I, inferred from later on when you said you went from being the youngest that you have an older sister.
I do,
And
yes.
so I'm curious if you've ever had a conversation with her about whether your arrival left any kind of wounds with her.
So what's interesting is my sister and I are 2 years apart.
Okay.
And so her wound is very different than mine.
Mm.
Her wound is classic first child
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
In other words, I'm not good enough. I'll
Yeah.
never be good enough. And interestingly enough, our paths took very different directions in terms of careers and relationships. And so some of her stuff, we have lots of conversations. And I was really nervous about writing this part of the book. And I haven't shared this anywhere else, but I sent my brother and sisters, so one brother, two sisters, the twins, boy, girl, and I sent them a copy of the book. And I
Mm.
said, hey, please read it. And if there's any part of this that you don't feel right with me sharing, let me know and I'll take it out.
Mm.
And my older sister read it and cried and loved it. My younger brother was like, I trust you. It doesn't matter. And my younger sister was like, I have some feelings. Can we
Wow.
can we get on a Zoom and talk about it? She lives in Germany.
Okay.
And we got on WhatsApp actually, and we just talked through it. And it wasn't to minimize what I wrote or to correct anything, but it was just to acknowledge that she had some pretty strong feelings from growing up feeling like they were unwanted.
Wow. So the other direction.
Yeah.
The other direction. Interesting. Interesting. Like in other words, my question was about an older sibling, but it was actually to the younger
The
sibling.
the, the older sister, she's just like she's got different demons to wrestle with as we all do, right? Like
Yeah.
the funny part is that I haven't met someone who hasn't been wounded or who hasn't wounded their kids.
Yeah.
And so if
Right.
you're listening to this and you've got kids, just know if they're over the age of 12, you've already wounded them, that it's there. And what's probably happened is you didn't wound them the same way that you were wounded, but you wounded them in a different way. Even trying to not wound them, I just never figure out a way not to have it.
And there's freedom there, right? There's freedom, there's grace, there's commiseration. There's a
Yeah,
lot there
right.
of like like with our spouses, with our friends, with our kids, we're not going to get it perfect. Even with the best intentions because it is often unintended.
Mhm.
This leads me into I said there were some big questions coming.
Love
This
it.
is a very big, deep theological question that makes me a little sweaty to even ask. So we're
Yeah,
just going to go
great.
for
I'm
it.
excited. Let's go. I knew this was gonna be great.
Oh boy, oh boy. Okay, so here we go. So we've laid some groundwork. It's unintended. There are no
Mhm.
villains. It's through no intention or malice of the outside person, but it's just through the broken human world how we interpret things. So the deep theological question is, with all of that being true, was it possible that Jesus walking around in the world as a human bumping into people the way that humans did, were any of his interactions would it be possible for him to leave a wound on someone? Not intended, no villains, no fault of his own. The guys in the temple, he flipped my table and I
Sure.
feel humiliated. Or Peter, he said, "Bah, you ye of little faith," but he meant it as ye of little faith. But I heard, "What's wrong with you?" Criticism. So is it possible for Jesus as a human to have bumped up and left wounds on real life people he interacted with? Or was there some sort of spiritual bubble wrap that kept him from having hard edges?
So there's not a ton of scripture to support this in any way. So this is all opinion, and this
Okay.
is what I would say, right? Um, in my relationship with my kids, for example, I didn't wound them. Like I didn't come in one day and say, "I'm going to wound you."
Right.
However, the brokenness of the world and the way it exists in them, caused a wound, and my
Mm,
behavior often bumped up against that wound.
mm,
I would say that Jesus often bumped up against people's wounds to the point where
mm.
it probably got him killed.
Wow. Wow.
So when people who are in power operate out of place of scarcity or scaredom, fear is a better word, and operate out of place of control and dictation, then that, from my opinion, most often is due to their wounding. It's due to an unfelt, like, I don't feel safe with this person in the world. And instead of operating out of logic and intentionality, I'm going to have an emotional reaction. I think you could make the argument, I will make the argument, that the mob that yells, crucify him, they don't crucify Jesus because they know him.
Oh, yeah.
They crucify Jesus because they're scared of what he might represent in their life.
Mm.
Uh,
What he knows about them, even.
Exactly. Hey,
Yeah.
there's this guy who doesn't fit into any of my boxes, and it bumps up against a lot of things in my life that make me feel unsafe. Right. And
Mm.
today we would call this Facebook, right? Like it's just like that idea of like, I'm going to respond emotionally to something that I'm really not even sure that I understand. And instead of seeking to understand, I'm just going to yell, crucify him, or
Mm.
insert political statement here, or vote this way, or whatever your belief is, right? It's just when we have an emotional reaction, we're generally responding from our wounding, not from our values or our intentional response.
Yeah. Ooh, that's good. So more a trigger to wounds that already existed than that he could have ever said anything that a wound was born out of.
And if you want to get really nerdy about theology for just a second
I
longer,
do. I
second
so do.
so 2 Corinthians 5:16 through 21 talks about the ministry of reconciliation.
Hmm.
The ministry of reconciliation, Paul writes to the church in Corinth. He says, practice the ministry of reconciliation. He says that. He says, you're a new creation in Christ. The old is gone and the new is here. 5:17 talks specifically about being an ambassador for Christ. And so Jesus, through his death and resurrection on the cross, reconciled our wound. He reconciled those. So literally, when Jesus came off the cross, he took your wound and my wound for us, so that our wounds became his wounds, so that we can operate out of our giftedness
Hmm.
and not out of our wounding. So
Yeah.
the ability to say I have a wound and it doesn't define me, right? The ability to I have these parts of my life that are old triggers, but I'm a new creation in Christ, is a gift that Christ gives us through his death and resurrection.
Okay, I have thoughts. I have questions
Hit
that are
me, hit
coming up
me.
in real
Love it.
time. Okay, so that imagery is so beautiful. I believe it 100%. Our wounds were exchanged for his, they were taken. And also, as we're going to get into more probably later in the conversation, but maybe we'll just go there now, depending. We'll go where you go. Um, you talk about our wounds becoming some of our greatest gifts through God's redemption, becoming some of
Mhm.
our greatest gifts. Let me set the question up this way. My friend Kim Butler says our greatest points of impact will come from our deepest places of empathy. So, how do we have our wounds exchanged and be wound free while also holding on to knowing that that wound was there slash
Yep.
is there in order to have the empathy so that our gifts are not lost?
So the idea of the ministry of reconciliation is very similar to the same prayer that we would pray in the Lord's Prayer. Your kingdom come, your will be done, right?
Mm,
On earth as it is in heaven. It's both a here and now and a not yet.
yeah.
And so we are saved. And that process of sanctification is that process of becoming more like Christ all the time. So you are a new creation in Christ. Yes, absolutely. And that is still a part of where you were. And so
Mm,
you're constantly going to bump up against what was with the hope to live into what will be. And
wow.
that every day is a choice. So that when I think specifically when Paul's writing in 2 Corinthians, he's telling the church in Corinth, this is a daily practice.
Yeah.
There's a reason why when Jesus first came out of the wilderness, he preached the message, repent and believe.
Mm,
Repent from what was and believe in what will be. And I think that every day, and
wow.
for
Wow.
if,
Just let that hang in the air for a second. What?
yeah.
Okay, that's good. Repent of what was and believe for what will be. That's good.
And that's Jesus's number one message, right? Like it's the very first thing he preaches.
Mm.
Hey, I know that you're hurting. I know that it's broken. I know that it feels terrible, and I'm sorry. But believe in me, because as the Father has sent me, so I send you.
Wow.
That's juice. That's the good
Yeah.
stuff, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
jam right there. And that's why all the gift, that's how, so like the enemy is not a creator.
Yeah.
And so that means that the enemy, you can begin to see patterns, right? And sometimes we call them personality profiles. Sometimes we call them lenses. Sometimes we call them enneagrams, whatever, right? Like, and I'm not saying that any of those things are bad. They're all good, but you can begin to see profiles
Mhm.
and tendencies. If you do this work long enough, you'll begin to see it. But here's the thing, the Lord is a creator. And so your gifting and the way it plays out and the way it gets used, man, that's divinely crafted by God. And he wants to use it in this incredible, powerful way. And so, like, your ability to communicate, Mary, for example, is like one of the incredible things that you do better than almost, I mean, you're a gifted writer and
Mm.
communicator, and that's woven into your story. And I would guess is probably directly connected to your wounded on the other
Yeah.
side. Like it's the Lord's redemption of that brokenness.
Totally. And underestimated, this idea of like a lifetime of being overlooked has turned you into someone who sees.
Yes.
And then I'm gonna have to think about the actual like what would be the wound that's the opposite of words? Maybe just being silenced. I
Yeah, I
don't
would
know.
feel
I'm
like
gonna have to
maybe
think about
not
that.
having a voice that mattered.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Not feeling like you mattered. Not feeling like my voice will not be welcome here. Yeah. 100%. That also like completely comes full circle and blew my mind when I was reading it. This is another like what is happening moment because in Underestimated, I talk about this idea of like fear is a really boring liar and fear is not a creative guy, but he is a busy guy. So he's learned how to
Mhm.
be productive. And when I was doing the podcast, I don't remember if we talked about this on your show or not, but this whole idea of like, wouldn't it make sense that if one of the first characteristics we know about God is that of creator and being made in his image, we therefore have this creativity, this to put things into the world and call them good. And the opposite of that, the enemy of that, the absence of that would be a lack of creativity. So when I read that, I was like 100%, a
Well, when I
hundred
read
percent
your
I'm
book, I
tracking.
was like, yes, we're so aligned on this. But
Yeah, I love that. I love when it's like this like multiple messages or the same
yeah,
messages
for
like being
sure.
beamed down at once. I love that so much. So let's talk about that. You identify in the book, this is not a comprehensive list, but you identify 5 very common wounds or sort of like as we would now say like boring ways that like the enemy is going to try
Mhm.
to attack you and keep you from doing the work you were put here to do. So I'm going to read those off. They are rejection, abandonment, betrayal, humiliation, injustice. Walk through any or all of those and like how if somebody has one of those wounds, that's the most important thing I want to hear is like how it might actually show up as they walk around in the world.
So the first thing that I think is really important, it's a tool that I love to put in people's hand, called the emotional intensity scale. And one of my core beliefs is that on a scale from 1 to 10, anytime your emotional intensity spikes above a 6, it's always more about you than it is the other person. And so if we really are 100% responsible for how we think, feel, and act, then it's physically impossible for anyone to make us mad. Instead, we have to choose to be mad. Right? We have to choose to be mad, which is fine. You're allowed to choose to be mad. I want you to just own it. Now, here's the key. If you want to identify the wound, begin to look at the behavior that triggers the spike in emotional intensity. And look for patterns. Look for patterns and then ask the question, when is the first time in my life that I felt that? So an easy one is the wound of rejection, right? So maybe you had a parent who worked second shift, and because that parent worked second shift, they never came to your games. They never showed up in the places that you were. They never really got to tuck you in at night.
Mm,
Nobody did that on purpose. And yet it's really easy to feel like you were rejected by that parent. And so
mm,
when somebody, maybe the emotional intensity spike looks like this. Somebody says they're going to be somewhere and then they don't show up and you lose your mind.
yep.
It's just that simple, right? It's a nuanced approach, right? Or that maybe you grew up in a home that felt like chaos.
Mhm.
There were people coming in and out all the time. Maybe it was unstable financially. Maybe it was a little
I just didn't, you never really sure if this was going to last, this season was going to last or not. And so in that season of chaos, maybe you have come to love and appreciate control. And so when somebody bumps up against that idea that, hey, we're not in control anymore, maybe that causes you to just lose your mind,
Yeah.
right? No, I can't do this. I cannot deal with this. I'm not going to do it. And so if you look for the spike,
Yeah.
you can trace that all the way back to the wound.
Wow. So I've talked a few times on this show. Longtime listeners will not be surprised by this. New listeners, welcome. Um, in 2020, when lockdown started, which also that was in March, my birthday. It was in May. I turned 40.
Mm,
I saw a real severe, f- consistent for the first time in my life spike in OCD.
wow.
So this is how bad it was. I would start on the third floor. We were in a 1880s fixer upper by the sea, 3 floors, old house. I started on the third floor in the living room, and there was like a routine that I had to check through. So swoop, swoop, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Light, lamp, cushion, cushion, pillow, pillow. Swoop, swoop, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Living room, check. So I knew where everything should be. And I'm not going to bore
Yeah.
you, but I did this in the whole third floor,
Wow.
the whole second floor, the whole first floor. So I started on the third floor, went to the second floor, went to the first floor. When I got to the first floor and finished that, the OCD in my brain would say, something's probably messed up on the third floor. You got to go back up and check that.
Hmm.
And so chaos on the outside world, also paired with turning 40, which for women can actually spike
Sure.
anxiety and
Absolutely.
OCD
Yeah.
hormonally, and ended up realizing that I was trying to control freak and have everything in its place inside because the world outside was just out of control. And what you're saying about the wound is this goes very much back to that trailer, trying to like hot glue bows on the curtains when the whole thing is like crumbling at the ceiling because like I'm trying to control what I can control when it feels like everything is chaos. So, all of that to say that super checks out.
Well, and so here's the thing, right? In a normal, I would say that you've probably got some big T trauma from your
Mm,
childhood. I think that you've talked about that pretty openly on here before, and
yeah.
it's a part of your story. You've written about it. The big T trauma magnifies the existing little t things, and that
Mm,
leads to what can oftentimes be really, it could be, not always, but unhealthy coping mechanisms.
yeah.
I stopped drinking, and people are always like, "Oh, did you have a drinking problem?" And I was like,
Mm.
"No, I was actually a really good drinker. I was really, I was an
I was
elite
so
level
good
of
at it.
drinker."
Yeah.
But I had a coping problem.
Yeah.
And so I realized that I was doing some things to cope because I didn't know what else to do with all the feelings that were bubbling up inside of me. And it happened all around the time we had just had our third kid. And so we've got 3 kids under 10. My wife is overwhelmed. I'm working in a church. Like all of these things are happening at the same time. And the only thing that I feel is that I don't matter anymore. Now, that's not the message my wife was trying to give, nor is it her fault. It's not, there's none of that, right? It's just realizing like I'm in an unhealthy place, right? And even I mean, this is real time processing from my marriage in the last couple of days. I'm really nervous about the book coming out.
Mm.
And it's all centered around my wound. It's centered around whether or not people like it. Like there's all of these people I get to talk to. I have a ton of respect for, and I'm just like, feelings, feelings, feelings. So what am I doing? Like I'm looking online for lake houses to buy.
Yeah.
And my wife is like, you need to stop. And
I
I
wanna
was
get as
like,
far away from this as possible.
right? I was like, I just want to go in the woods and hide. And
Thoreau
she was
did
like,
it.
I
It's
don't believe
fine.
you. Right? But here's the deal. It's not bad. It just is. Like
Yeah.
it's like I'm looking at Sprinter vans too. Like it's off, it's dumb. I'm like, we could go football games, we could, whatever. And
Yes.
it's just the reality is I have a lot of feelings and it's bumping up against a lot of old tapes, old wounds. It's just bumping up against all my stuff. And so in those moments, I just need to be aware of them. Like what, looking at lake houses or Sprinter vans, that's not wrong. Now buying them would would probably be not ideal. All right, I don't
Yeah.
wanna make an emotional decision,
Yeah.
but it's just acknowledging I've got a lot of feelings right now, and just saying, okay, what am I going to do with those in a healthy way to make sure that nobody in my life gets hurt and my values and what I want for who I am doesn't get off course.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things you do such a beautiful job in the book, and you've done it in this episode, is making clear when you say through no fault of anyone else, and you're very kind to your parents and your family and all of that. And so my question, of course, and I think probably a question that is coming up for some listeners is like, what if it is through the intentional fault of other people, and not even to the level of big T trauma,
Yeah,
right? What if it is just somebody who's like critical, and they know they're critical, and they like making you feel small or whatever it is, a narcissist parent or
sure.
whatever? Is that just another very like another wound, like
Uh,
another
so
horse of a different
here's
color?
the reality is that I can choose to blame them, and they probably deserve some blame, right? If
Mm,
that person exists in your world, or I can choose to have grace.
mm,
Now, grace for someone else gives me permission to have grace for me.
yeah.
And so grace, in the way I kind of define it in the writing, is that grace is empathy plus curiosity. Grace lived out. And so now as an adult, one of the things that I've begun to realize is I'm a third generational person with addictive tendencies in my family.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's just my mom's got some addictive tendencies. My grandpa certainly did,
Mhm.
right? And all of those things are just true. Now, here's the thing. If I can have grace for my wound,
Mhm.
then I can have grace for their wound.
Yeah.
I know that some people in my family tree weren't the nicest people in the world. Do I think they really want to live that way? And when I wrestle with that, the answer that I come back to is always no. I don't know anybody who wants to wake up and be like, today I want to be a jerk and mad at the world.
Again, Facebook and
Right.
Threads and whatever might make us feel
Right,
a little
right.
differently.
X, all of them. Right. But here's the thing, when I see somebody lash out on that, you know what I
Mm,
think of?
mm.
Man, I can't imagine what is bumping up against their wound today.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can
Because
almost
now it's
always
because
see it too, right? In like whatever the
now it's
post was.
oh man,
Yeah.
always. Like I was like, like like I want to help.
Right, there's like a neon
Right.
arrow.
Pay attention, like, oh,
Yeah.
but that so many people don't have someone who
Mm,
loves them enough to walk with them in the quagmire of their emotions.
yeah,
And so I'm so thankful that I have a great therapist. I've got great men's groups. Like I've got a great wife. I've got incredible people in my life who are willing to just let me verbally process all the things that are happening inside of me so that I don't post it on Facebook.
right. Here's another one of the wounds. Like we talked about the five: rejection, abandonment, betrayal, humiliation, injustice. One that I wanted to get your take on. Maybe it's a sub wound of those five, or maybe it's a sixth one, but it's one I see a lot in my coaching clients, and I do talk about it in underestimated in a roundabout way, which is what I'm learning to call the wound of visibility.
Mm,
I think more specifically, the wound itself is like shame
yeah.
or maybe scarcity. I'm not sure. But the fear of success often comes from if I am seen, then I'm in danger. Like the only way to stay safe is to stay hidden. And it's sort of the feeling people get when a post starts to go viral and it's like, just kidding, don't look at me.
I'm taking it down.
Yeah. And inevitably we know that that also of course brings criticism. So that's a component of it, but there is this I've seen in people that I coach, I've seen it in myself. It's like the shadows feel safe. And it's not safe from something that happened when you were
Mm,
little to be visible, like to be a problem, to be a bother. That I grew up in the 80s, so we were the like go to your room or go to the woods,
that's
but
right.
don't bother me kind
Come
of
home
thing.
when the street lights
Yeah.
are on
Right.
and we'll see you for
Yeah.
dinner, right? Like it's
Yeah. So do you think this is just like a sixth tool in the tool belt of a boring, uncreative enemy, or is it does it fall under rejection or one of the other ones?
it might fall under rejection. It might be a different way that rejection shows up,
Yeah.
right? I think it probably the idea of not wanting to be seen might also be like performance equals love kind of thing. Like, hey, I'm afraid if I perform really well, you're going to require that of me all the time, and I don't know what to
Oof.
do with that. And like,
That oldest, my son, that's kind of his wound is like he always feels pressured by us as parents, even though we never feel like we're pressuring him. We're just asking questions. And yet, when he was 8 years old, we brought him to the church and we said, "Hey, son, it's really important that you stand here and behave. My job depends on it. The place that we lived in at the time depends on it. Like
Right?
everything's riding on this. Don't mess it up." Now, that's not
Right.
the way we said it, but for sure that's the way he heard it.
Mm,
And so I think this idea about playing small or not playing into this whole deal, it's twofold. One, if I play small, then you don't have the opportunity not to love me.
wow. We're just gonna let that one hang there for a while. Woo! I'm not even gonna give you the chance to not love me. Wow. Okay. Well, I'll think about that for 47 days straight.
Well, so listen,
Woo!
in the coaching world, this happens all the time with people who would rather spend their days at work than clean up the messy relationships at home.
Mhm.
I just don't even want to give you the chance to reject me again. And there's tons of people who play small that way.
Wow. Justin and I went to go see the new The Roses movie, which is a
Oh, is it
remake
good?
of it's so good. Such good writing, incredible acting,
Love
incredible
it.
acting.
Can't wait to check it out.
Those 2 are just phenomenal, masters of their craft. Olivia, oh, what is her last name? Colman and Benedict Cumberbatch. I'm just blown away by them. Anywho, there's this scene, this very epic scene. I'm gonna try not to give too much away here, but a very I just can't stop thinking about it. It's a scene where like they're at the height of just like being totally disconnected
Mm,
from one another and fighting and starting to go through a divorce. And he's on a run and he finds a whale that's been beached. And he goes through this incredible experience of like working, he flags some strangers down and they work together as this like common thread of humanity and existence and
yeah.
creation to get this whale back to freedom. And he comes back and she says, "How was your run?" And he's like, "Fine." And she gets a text that says, "Oh my gosh, Theo just helped save a whale." And she's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And he said, "I didn't want you to ruin it."
Mm.
And I think that's just kind of like what you're talking about, right? It's like I would rather just like disconnect out of life. I would rather like not even give you the chance to reject me or to not like see it the way that I did. So I just can't stop thinking about this movie. It's just like so good. Talked about something totally different in the last episode, but basically this is just a non-paid advertisement to go see the roses.
Well, I think it brings up a really good point, right? Um, intimacy is vulnerability.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so, hey, if I'm going to give you a look and decide who I am, then I'm really vulnerable in that moment. And if you don't love what you see, I don't know how to fix that.
Right. Right.
And that's
Yeah.
where it takes just a tremendous amount of courage to be able to say, I don't have to fix it.
Mm. Man, I'm just gonna be thinking about this forever because I'm still on the previous thing. I'm still on the previous thing, like, because like, I write these books that are truly excellent, and I know they're excellent, and I'm so proud of them, and I put them out there with courage, but then there's, like, this part of me that's like, I want them to sell, and I want them to do all the other things, but, like, what if they do? But, like, I it's not even like I don't think that thing is worthy of them loving it. So, is it me? I gotta think about that some more. What in
Well,
the
so
world?
here would be a question to wrestle with, and is the thought of these things doing remarkably well, which they already have by all accounts, but like they continue to like just spiral into us in crazy moment of success.
Like
When is
tipping
the
point kinda thing. Yeah.
right? Yeah, like when is that fear? When is the first time that you felt that fear in your life?
Hmm.
And so begin to chase that thread all the way. Like
Yeah.
chase that thread all the way back. Would it go back to some place in your childhood that basically said, like, if we had a house like everyone else, or if
Mm.
we had a space like everyone else, or a family like everyone else, or like if I had everything I wanted in life. And so it's an interesting process of just chasing the thread throughout patterns. And then, one of the other things that I'm a big fan of, and you probably do this with your coaching clients too, is to ask some of the people who are closest in your life, who are both truthful and graceful, ask them the question, what's it like to be on the other side of me?
Justin would love to answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure
Absolutely.
your wife would too,
Give
yeah.
him a heads up and give him a
Especially in book
parameter.
launch, yeah. Book launch season in particular, totally. You know what came up for me as you were talking, and man, this is why I love, 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 love doing episodes with fellow podcasters because it's like, who is like when I probably did this when I was on your show, like, I need to ask you these 10 questions. Like, it's like, who's even like hosting anymore? I love that because I think that's where real conversations happen. But the thing that came up for me as I trace it back, and I'm gonna, like I said, I'm not kidding, I'm gonna think about this for 47 days, is probably I did everything right. I was
Mm,
like classic good girl, A plus plus overachiever, and my mom still left. It still
yeah.
wasn't enough to get her to stay. So I think the fear is like I did everything. I did everything this book needed to be, and you're gonna read it, and you're still gonna give it a 1-star review or whatever, not like it or not recommend it or whatever the
Essentially, you're
outcome is.
still not gonna love me.
Yeah, right. Well, that's just turned into a therapy session for Mary, so that's okay. That's okay.
Well, so
Uh,
here's the key, right? Here's the key. Both of those things, but like we have to give both of those things space.
mm,
And now, 40-year-old something version of Mary can now minister.
yeah.
How old were you when your mom left?
Like 8 going on 9,
Yeah.
maybe 9 going on 10.
So now, if you were to sit knee to knee with that 8-year-old version of you and look her in the eye
Mhm.
right after the day after her mom leaves,
Yeah.
that's the message that she needs to hear. And by God's grace, he has given you the words
Oh,
a-
what?
and the ability to communicate at such a high level,
Hmm.
to share your heart so authentically that you now have the words for her.
Well, I'm not gonna look you in the eye anymore because I'm gonna cry on my own show, and that's not okay.
It is okay. It's
You and Ian Morgan
good.
crying, dang it.
It's good.
Woo!
It's so
Okay.
good.
It is good, it is good. Okay, okay, well, talking about triggers brings me to my next question. You mentioned the emotional intensity scale. You mentioned, like, anything above a 6 is probably not about the other person, but about you. Here's the question I have. You also mentioned in the book that it's not just the negative things that have that
Sure.
emotional
Yep.
response. It's like
It's positive things as well. Absolutely.
how much stake are you putting into the positive things? Like how much value are you putting in the I got a shiny gold star, I got an achievement? Like how overvalued are you? Overemphasis are you putting on those things? And the question I have for you there is how do we distinguish between this healthy level of calm neutrality that lies between -6 and +6 or whatever and just becoming numb to life, like the colors of life starting to not be so vivid, losing some of that, like not stop being people. One of the things that I've heard people talk about with Jimmy Fallon is that he's just like has no chill for how delicious life is. Like this meatball
Yeah.
is the best meatball. So how do we become really even keel people where neither the good nor the bad sends us to the extremes without life losing its color?
So what I'm suggesting is not that we become even keel people.
Okay.
I don't want that at all. I want
Mm.
everyone to be as dramatic as I am. Like I am the drama queen in my marriage every day, right? Like my wife is the rock and I'm the wave. That's the way we talk about it. She's steadfast. She's had one job in 24 years. I've had 20 jobs, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm a serial entrepreneur. Like I just love to do different stuff. So I'm not suggesting that if you spike above a 6, it's in any way bad.
Mm.
I'm just suggesting that you should pay attention to it.
Okay. Good clarification. Okay.
Like the idea that you're above a 6 is great. Good, bad, indifferent. I don't care what spikes you above a 6. I just don't want you to like the best way to think about it is I want the emotion in the car. I just don't want it in the driver's seat.
Mhm. Yeah, that's
And
good.
so put it in the passenger seat, put it in the back seat, have all the emotion. So even the people who are muted, like I do a lot of coaching with scientists, engineers, and they'll be like, emotions. I've read about those things. Right.
Yeah.
And so they have a 6. Their 6 just looks way different than my verbose,
Mm,
like gregarious, let's
yeah.
cry and talk about our feelings and hug it out, like do the stuff, right? Like that's my 6, but it's not their 6. Their 6
Interesting.
is theirs. And so
Okay.
when you take the scale, you can make it apply to your life and however you interpret feelings. And I just want you to notice that you're above a 6.
Okay.
Feelings are meant to be felt.
Hmm.
It's why Jesus weeps before he brings Lazarus back from the dead. Decisions are our feelings are decision points, they're not decision makers.
And when we let feelings become decision makers, then what we're doing is we're making them Lord of our life. And I want you to be happy and I want you to be sad. And I just want you to feel both and then have enough wisdom not to make a decision out of it.
Wow, that's good. That's good. Talking about, like, how unique we all are and that your 6 is not my 6, um, and vice versa, let's kind of move into talking a little bit about the wounds become the gifts. God is creator who actually does come up with a bunch of different uses for things where the enemy of that is very repetitive, only has a few Mad Libs scripts to work with. Mad Libs, what do you call them in the book? Like buckets or silos or like prototypes
Yeah, I
to work
like
with.
prototypes. I think is
Yeah.
it's just this idea that he's just not a creator. So you can begin to see the patterns, you can begin to see the recognitions, whereas God creates something that's just so different.
Yeah. I love that part so much. Let's just kind of set up the talk about the paradox of gifts. One of the most profound truths I've learned is this: on the other side of our wounds lies our greatest gift. It's a paradox that often feels counterintuitive. For example, you say, my wounding stems from not feeling seen as a child. Out of that pain, God has given me the gift of truly seeing others at a deep personal level, which we've already seen play out in this podcast episode, which is great. And I added to that, that whole thing of a lifetime of being overlooked has turned you into someone who sees. I mentioned that quote from my friend Kim earlier. I want to say it again. Our greatest points
Mhm.
of impact come from our deepest places of empathy. And you talk about what a gift it is that the wound happens and then God in his goodness uses it for our good to be an innovative, creative gift. So maybe just say what you want to say about that because then I have a question going in the other direction.
I really believe that the more that you can appreciate your gift, like what an incredible thing that God did for us in
Mm,
giving us this gift and redeeming that brokenness. And so, we referenced a little bit from your life. And so, one of the things is controlled, right? And having words to describe it. What an incredible gift you have that has impacted so many thousands of people. And that would not have happened had you not lived in that home
mm,
and your mom had not dealt with her own demons the way that she did. And so now you can look back at that 8-year-old version of Mary and say, thank you, God, for taking care of me
mm.
and giving me this moment in my life so that I can give it away in this way.
That's right. Ooh, that's good. I want to read a passage and then I'm going to set up my question that goes the other direction. You talk about Romans 8:28 reminds us, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose, who have been called according to his purpose. This redemptive work means that on the other side of your wound, you often find your greatest gift. And you go on to say, these gifts are not coincidences. They are part of the redemptive work that God does in our lives, turning what once hurt us into a source of healing and purpose for ourselves and others. For example, if you excel at bringing order to chaos, sorting, organizing, and helping things or people find their rightful place, it's possible that your childhood felt disordered or chaotic. Your gift of order may have developed as a response to the instability you once experienced, giving you the ability to create calm and clarity in the midst of confusion. Similarly, if you have a knack for disarming tense situations with humor and making people feel at ease, your gift of peace might have grown out of a childhood marked by conflict or disorder. You learned how to use humor to bridge gaps and soothe tensions. And now it's a tool you wield naturally. Or perhaps you're someone who remains calm under pressure, able to bring a sense of steadiness to stressful situations. That gift of calmness may have been forged in a home where intensity was the norm, teaching you how to stay grounded amidst the storm. Even seemingly simple wounds, like feeling that your parents weren't around much because they were always working, can shape profound gifts. In this case, your wound or perceived absence may have given rise to a gift of presence. You might be someone who is unwaveringly available to those you care about, making them feel valued and supported in a way you once longed to feel yourself. So, 100% see and agree that they work that direction. The
Mm-hmm.
question I have for you, another deep theological question, is in Underestimated. I talk about fear attacking you at the crosshair intersection where your gifts meet your story, which I think is what you're saying,
Very
right?
similar.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Same thing.
Could it be possible in a very sort of screw tape letters sort of way that the enemy saw where God had gifted us? Can it work both directions? The enemy first looked and said, oh, God's given you this. I'm now going to wound you in a way that undermines that gift.
Yes. And I would say that it works in the similar sense of both the here and now and the not yet, right? And so in this kind of spiritual, like the flesh and the spiritual realm, we have to assume that time is really no longer in the world,
Mm,
right? And so if we remove time as a function, then when the enemy went and what we experience in the garden, right? The first sin, the epistemic consequence of that sin, um, you know, God's gift was presence. Through sin, they lost presence.
right.
And so it's a both and, right? Like it would be unrealistic to think that the enemy didn't wound us in a way that also, like, I don't want to give the enemy too much credit ever. And so but I do think that the spiritual forces of the world of good and evil, they work outside of time.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so that idea that, like, man, when sin entered the world, it entered in a way that attacked everything that God did. And Ephesians 6, of course, reminds us that we actually just the enemy isn't fighting a battle against the Lord. He's fighting a battle against us because the Lord's already won the battle. And the enemy knows that. So he's just trying to distract us with all of these things in the midst of us living for the Lord.
Hmm.
And so I could very easily, this is the first time I've ever thought about it. So it's a great question. And also I could very easily see how it would be a both and, not an either
Mm.
or.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm running short on time with you, so I want to make sure I get to these last couple of questions. First, I just want to read this because it wraps up what we were just talking about so
Mhm.
beautifully about the enemy being uncreative and God being very creative. Um, understatement of the year. Wounds are nuanced and personal. God's gifts work the same way. You have been given something that is unique to you. No one else has what you have. People might have something that looks similar, but you are different, and the God of all creation has given it to you for your specific use in the world. As an Enneagram 4, I super loved that. I love the original. I
Praise
loved it.
God for that.
I loved it. Okay, so last kind of big question for the person who's been listening all along. Um, you you talk about in the intro of the book, you're talking about 2020 in particular, but it also kind of references back to when you were deployed. You say life's rhythms often intertwine routine with upheaval, sometimes so seamlessly that we barely notice the transition until we're already in it. This we don't even know we're in upheaval till we're sort of already in it. And it reminds me of a conversation that I just had on the show with Jillian Benfield because both of your books come out today on the same
Love it.
day, called Overwhelmed and Grateful. And in her book, she talks about how the Psalms actually follow this rhythm of orientation, disorientation, and reorientation, or what she
Mm,
calls order, disorder, and reorder. And that just reminded me a lot of that, of like you're so in the routine that you don't even realize you've started to move from order to
yeah.
disorder before coming to a new thing on the other side. And you say in the book, that's the thing about prolonged stress, like what you were describing in the intro.
Mhm.
It doesn't just weigh on you in the moment, it lingers over time. It turns the cracks into our in our lives into canyons. Cracks are the small, manageable fractures we can ignore or step over. But canyons, they demand our attention. They force us to stop, to look down into their depths, and to reckon with what we see. They reveal parts of ourselves we might prefer to leave hidden. And so I just want you to leave some parting words for the person who's been listening all along and they're like, listen, I need to do this work. I'm watching you guys do it in real time. I need to go trace threads all the way back to the beginning of my story as well. But I'm so in survival mode. The whole world feels like it's on fire right now that I don't even have time to tend to these wounds. I'm just trying to get through the day. What parting words do you want to leave that person with about why those are exactly some of the times when cracks turn to canyons and it actually might make the finding the root of our wounds easier to identify?
So, a little known fact is that the first time I tried to sell this book to a publisher, it was called Cracks to Canyons.
Whoa. Okay.
And it was all about how much 2020 felt like my deployment and just the parallels and the things that I had learned in that process. No publisher wanted it, and I couldn't give it away, right? Like I couldn't. It was just it was uranium. It was so hot, right? Like it was just crazy. And here's the thing about cracks and canyons. Canyons give us the unique ability, if done well, to explore the depths of who we are so that they no longer become scary.
Mm.
And if you're listening to this and you feel like your entire life is on fire around you, just know that if you're willing to do this work, you won't get burned by the fire. That just like what we see in scripture, that Jesus is in that fire with you. And then he wants nothing more for you to have order in your life where he is Lord and his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And that is the life of someone who's living in the fullness of God's presence.
Mm.
And so hope, love, joy, peace, forbearance, gentleness, self-control, the fruit of the Spirit is a gift that happens when we're fully aligned. But in order to get fully aligned, we must be willing to go into the canyons of our life and say, Lord, I surrender this part to me, this part to you as well.
Mm.
I surrender all of this. I don't understand it. I don't need to understand it. I just want you to know that you've got it.
Mm.
And as you begin to do that work, I guarantee you'll find peace.
Mm. That's good. That's good. And can I tell you something really wild? I wasn't going to stop you because you were on flow, but can I tell you something really wild?
Sure, yeah, hit it.
Jillian Benfield in her episode also talked about a book that she shopped around that no publisher would take, a book that she thought it was supposed to be this version of itself, and then that concept became the intro to the book that did get picked up. And
Here's
then
what's
for
also
you,
crazy
isn't
is you're
that
the
wild?
second person in 2 days to talk to me about Jillian Benfield.
Interesting. Well, I mean, you're probably doing a lot of the same, but
Right,
still, there
right.
maybe y'all need to know each other. I don't know.
I'm thinking I need to have her on the podcast.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Absolutely. She's phenomenal. You will love her. I love that. Okay, so we could do this all day, clearly. I don't
Sure,
think
I
that's a
love it.
secret to
It's so you're
anybody.
so good at this. Mary,
Ditto.
you're so good at this. Thank you for
Ditto.
your research and your work and your heart for people.
Yeah, well, listen, right back at you. Like I said from the very beginning, this is the experience that I had when I was on your show. So I got you. I'm happy to do that. Where can they find you? Where can they find the book? Out
The
today.
book,
Are there any bonuses
yes.
that are still good as of today?
I mean, we're still putting out the foreword, who was written by my dear friend Kristen LaValle. She's an incredible writer. She's great.
Nice.
She's a far better writer than I am. She's really gifted at that stuff. And we're also giving away the first chapter. If you go to wisdominthewoundbook.com, wisdominthewoundbook.com, all of that's on there. And more than anything, we're just praying about what God's going to do through all of that. I'm pretty active on Instagram at twmilt at twmilt, and of course on the podcast every single week. Follow the number 2 lead podcast. Go look for the Mary Marantz
That's
episode. It
right.
was so good. Maybe we'll link to that in the show notes.
Yes,
Great.
absolutely. I love that. I love that. All right, friends, the book is Wisdom in the Wound: How God Uses Your Past to Shape Who You're Becoming. It is out today everywhere books are sold. Get this in your hands. Get it into the hands of a friend or family member who really needs it. And for now, I want to leave you with these words from Tony. But there's hope because while the enemy cannot create, our Father in heaven is the ultimate creator. Christ doesn't just leave us in our brokenness, he steps into it with creativity and power, redeeming our wounds in ways we could never imagine. His work is never formulaic or one size fits all. Instead, he meets each of us uniquely, crafting a redemptive story that transforms pain into purpose. What once was a source of shame becomes a source of strength. What once was a place of brokenness becomes a platform for connection and healing. This creative redemption is not just evidence of God's power, but also a testament to his deep love for us. He doesn't just patch us up, he makes us new. Until next time, friends, this is the Mary Marantz Show, and welcome to your underestimated season.